Ladies and gentlemen, I know what you're all thinking. I'd love to play the Freddy Krueger repertoire, but the move D4 is frustrating. Now, let me show. I'm just going to add a chapter to this. So VGD, right? So in the Vienna Gambit Declined, we play with in the Vienna Gambit we have the white pieces, and we do this. We bring out a knight, and they do this. And the idea of the Vienna Gambit is to push pawn to F5, okay? And to accept the gambit is suicidal for black as we push, etc. Now the best response is to push the queen's pawn to squares. And this brings us into all kinds of interesting stuff. Okay, now the normal routine is this. I've actually started looking because Queen F3 is really fashionable right now. Just humour me here a minute. Right? Queen F3 is fashionable. This is the Paulson attack, but they have this Knight C6 move. Knight C6 does really, really well for black here. Unless you find Bishop B5, but black, honestly, black is better in every line, as you can see on here. Okay, so this is the key move, right, against the Vienna Gambit. Now, I've now gone back to, so I mean, ED is playable, but again better for black. I think I've been looking at, was it this move this morning? This move, no, then they take on E. What is it? I can't remember, but it was involving a Queen E2. Yeah, is it immediate Queen E2? No, that's not it. Anyway, I'll get back to that. But I did find a bit of a line this morning where I was messing about, thinking, you know, I'm not quite happy with this Paulson version. I think it might even be this. But Bishop G4 here is uncommon. This is it, right? That you take, they take, and then you've got Queen E2 or Knight F3. I think, is it Knight F3 now? Bishop C5, no. Queen E2 now. Very uncommon. Queen E2, no, it's not it. Anyway, forget about that. I'll get back to you on that one. But we came here to talk about the Freddy Krueger repertoire. Now, the idea of the Freddy Krueger repertoire is that we are using the same principles as in the Vienna Gambit, but we're doing it when we have the black pieces. Okay, and I've prepared for you 8 wee chapters on this, well, around this particular move, this particular theme. Okay, so we start with E4, E5. Now, the most common move here is Knight to C3. Sorry, Knight to F3. Knight to F3 is played nearly 2/3 of the time, and I've got my numbers set to 1800, 2022. Okay, most common move played here, to which we follow up with this. Okay, now this is not like the Vienna because the wrong knights are out. Okay, in the Vienna the opposite knights are out, but that's not the point. Okay, so from this position we have many moves that white plays. The most common at this level being the Italian, then the Spanish, which then becomes more common at the master level. We have D4, the Scotch, we have Knight C3, the 3 knights, and we have C3, the Ponziani opening, and D3, the whatever the hell that is opening. Okay, and we're going to look at some of these. In fact, we're going to look at all of those and more. So, most common move, the Italian, to which we play immediate F5 altogether. Now, F5, which is the Russo Gambit. Now, E takes F5 is not good for white. E takes F5, we push the pawn forward. This is like the first rule to remember. And this is why this is really quite an easy thing, and it suits, you know, the terminally lazy like me. Okay, so if they take the pawn, you just push on and worry the knight. This is, we just saw that. I mean, that's the Vienna Gambit accepted. Okay, and 57% win rate for black from that point. Now, if they play pawn to D4 now, this is the thing, because I play all of these openings, right? I play the Russo, the Janish, the winner with the Ponziani counter gambit, etc. I play it against the Scotch. I play it against everything I can, and then I get stuck when white plays D4, because white might be familiar with the Vienna Gambit, and they might know how to basically refute or at least neutralise the Vienna Gambit with pushing the queen's pawn out and getting this structure. Now, so I find myself like confused. Well, okay, in the Russo, it's which do you take? Do you take one? What do you do? Or do you bring your knight out? I can't remember. What in the Janish? What about the other? So I've made this little video to try and answer those questions, and I've got a wee rule. Okay, the rule is: do we have the Italian bishop? Okay, if we have a bishop on c4, then you take the pawn next to it. Well, why, you may be asking? Well, I'm asking myself the same question, but it's best, okay? So, the most common move here is actually f takes e4, hitting the knight. But the engine says e takes d4, so if the bishop is there, take the pawn next to it, okay? Now, they're most likely to take with the knight, and here's another rule, right? This knight comes forward, okay? Attacking this knight, doesn't matter which square it comes to, don't flinch, okay? Always bring out your other knight, particularly when this diagonal is open, okay? We have to protect against this. If you can get your knight to f6 or your queen to f6, yeah, you should be all right. So how will it go from here? They might take, which is inaccurate, and here we take with the b pawn, okay? Not the d pawn, and the point is we don't want to trade queens. Okay, you take with the b pawn. The computer has white slightly better, and white is slightly better. White will win a little bit more of the time. Okay, but remember, this is all if they find this move, pawn to d4, which is not the most common move. E takes d5 is the most common, played over one game in 3, right? The next one, also 1 in 3 games, d3. Okay, and d3 is not so good either, although, you know, it's okay. And d4 is the third most common move. So you'll see it 1 in 3 games-ish. Okay, so just remember this rule. They play this. If it's next to the bishop, snatch it. All right. Now to the Janish. Very similar, right? But here the bishop has come to the Spanish square instead of the Italian square. Okay, we do the same thing. f5, right? Now, the move d4 here is actually very uncommon, right? d3 is much more likely, and that's slightly better for black. Bishop takes knight is better for black. Knight to c3 is evens, and e takes f5 is also more common, and that's better for black, right? The move d4 is played 1 in 14 games, 7.2%. Okay, and if they do that, do we have a bishop here? No. No, we don't, okay? So what we do is we take the other pawn and hassle the knight. Okay, makes sense. And one day, I hope to figure out why. Now, they take our pawn here. That's not great, that's not accurate. And here is the case when the knight comes in, okay? And we can take it, right? The point is we can take it because the knight wasn't pinned. And in case of queen h5, we can bring our knight back to g6 and block. All right. The most common move here, of course, though, is that they will take. And then the thing you have to remember, the most commonly played move by a mile is pawn to c6. Hit the bishop, prepare to engage the queen into the game, and we are slightly better on the engine. And we win 56% of the time from here. Okay, so that's your Janish. So this is almost like a whistle-stop tour to the whole Freddy Krueger black gambit. Okay, let's move on now to the winner, which is the knight to c3 on move 3, right? So the most popular moves are bishop c4, then, so Italian, then Spanish, then d4 is actually, so the Scotch is more common than this. The 3 knights, slightly less common. We play pawn to f5 anyway, and this is called the winner defense against the 3 knights. Right, the computer doesn't like it. And here, the most common move, and in fact the best move for white, is pawn to d4. Right, so what do we do? Well, what does our rule say? Have we got a bishop here? No. Okay, now f takes e4, and it's 48-48. Right? The most common move for for white, is to take this pawn. And this is not a good move, precious. Why isn't it a good move? Well, it's the Halloween variation, isn't it? Yeah, we push d5. We're attacking the knight. Okay, the knight might come here or it might come here. Okay, most common is knight c3, and then we push e4 again. Right, we get that variation. Let me show you on here. Okay, we have the Vienna Gambit. If they decline it with a knight here, do you see the same pattern? The three knights. Okay, we take. If they take back, boom, and whether they come here or here, right? What's most common? Knight g6 is most common, right? Again, we push on. We've won all these tempi, right? We've got great control over the center, and these horses are just falling over themselves to go backwards. In fact, knight g8 is played here. Okay, so this is the winnower. Go over it again. Three knights. We play f5, right? Computer doesn't approve. Computer says d4. Most people play d4, okay? And we know what to do. We take the pawn. And knight takes e5 is actually better here for white, but slightly less common. Okay, if they take this, you go Halloween line, thank you very much, knight comes back, and boom, and we are slightly better, and we win 55% of the time from there. Okay, so we're not going over all the lines here. This is a whistle-stop tour. The Ponziani. This is the fifth most common move, so I should really have put the Scotch in higher up, but hey. e4, e5, knight, that. So we're grouping them together here. So we've seen bishop here, knight here, right? So we're grouping them together with the two knight f3 moves, okay? Now, this is the Ponziani opening. Very, very old-fashioned opening, very good opening, and clearly white is preparing to push the pawn to d4, now supported by the c-pawn. Okay, super principled. What do we do? In fact, what is the winningest move for black from this position at this level? Right, the intermediate level, it's pawn to f5, 54% win rate. Oh, look at that. Now, most commonly played move is e takes f5, right? E takes f5, we win 55%. Second most common move is pawn to d4. And pawn to d4, right? Do we have a bishop here? No, right? So we take the pawn, we worry the knight. Now, what are they going to do? In fact, from every line here, black wins more than white does. Whatever they do, right? Most common is they take this pawn. Now, what's the rule? Okay. It's normally this. Interestingly, in the Ponziani, there is a better move. In fact, well, yeah, knight to f6 wins 56% for black. So perfectly good move. Perfectly good move, old chap, right? Defends against the queen and stuff like that. But if you can remember in the Ponziani, so you've got knight f6, but also queen f6 wins 58% of the time as well. Queen f6, the computer recommends. Yeah, queen f6, knight takes there, and then here again we take with the b pawn. So, but yeah, knight out is fine. You want to follow the rules. Here again, take with the b pawn, and we are just better. We win 2/3 of the time from this position. Right, now let's move on to the Scotch, because the Scotch. Okay, now I'm gonna move my Scotch up there because that's where it deserves to be. Okay, the Scotch. Now this is what's really interesting. Okay, so white has already played d4 in the Scotch, and we now play f5. So now it's white to move. Now, if they move the bishop out here, that would be a transposition into the Rousseau Gambit with d4. If they play the bishop out to here, that would be a transposition to the Janish, right? To which, so Spanish, Janish, d4. So we know what to do in those cases. If there's no bishop on there, then we take this. If there is a bishop here, we take this, and so on. Okay, now, the most common move here is the best move by white, which is for knight takes pawn. And here, right? So we never really want to rush to take that knight, okay? Now in this case, knight to f6 is not the best move, right? We don't want to take this knight, but there's no point in playing knight to f6 right now, because we've still got the pawn. Okay. Anyway, let me show you this line. Okay. So we take the other pawn. It's there anyway. Okay. If they play queen out here, okay, we cannot play king to e7 here. Okay. There's only two moves, right? Two legal moves. This is suicidal because the queen then comes in here. We have to go there, and then actually the knight just pivots around and it's checkmate. Okay. So if we go here, queen f7, that there, and the queen is covering all of these squares around the knight, and that's checkmate. You don't want that. Okay. So what we have to do in this instance, we have to push g6. They take with the knight, and knight to f6. Okay. So they are threatening to capture the rook with a discovered check, but it means nothing because we can capture the checking piece. And from here, I mean, black is just better. Again, black is better in every line, wins 58% of the time. You know, and that's just the way it is. Okay, we're better in any line, quite honestly. So that's your Scotch. Let's just go over that again, because this is quite different. Okay, it's a quite different setup, and that's if the knight takes there, then we take this pawn. Okay, now. So that is the most common at strong levels. If they push and take the knight, we take this one, right? I know that much. But the most common move takes, take the pawn, invite the queen out, and we're okay here, right? We are not in too much trouble because we can play our knight to f6 and we're okay. This is a pattern, if you play the Krueger repertoire, you will see this a lot, and you need to know about the different kind of variations. If you've got a pawn here, for example, you've got to be very careful about, you know, these forks. You see that in the King's Gambit and all kinds of things. Anyway, so let's look at some of the more dubious sidelines that you might come across. Right? So we have this d3. What's this one? Okay, I don't even know what you would call this. But against d3, guess what? 54% win rate for black with pawn to f5, right? We'll just go through these. But here, actually, d4 is extremely uncommon. It's played less than 1% of the time. d4 is just not played here, okay? Most common move is knight to c3. And here, we just don't rush. Just don't rush. Just develop your knight. And we're happy. We win 53% from there, okay? What about bishop e2? Okay, bishop e2, it's kind of played. This is the Taylor opening. And again, the winningest move is pawn to f5, right? Now d4 is not played very often. It's played in about 1 in every 15 games. The most common move actually is d3, okay? If they take the pawn here, then that's dubious. So pawn to d3, and again we just develop the knight, and we're winning 54% of the time. Okay, but the really interesting thing is that whatever line we go down, we're going to be seeing very similar patterns over and over again. That's why I like it. All right, let's look at one more. The move g3. How about g3? Okay, they push g3. So this is called the Konstantinopolski. There you go. It's not common. How frequently do we see this? Not very frequently at all. 0.2% of the time. So you're looking 1 in 500 games. But anyway, they play g3. And again, actually, there's two good moves here. Pawn to d5 and pawn to f5. Both winningest. Both on 53%. We play f5. And we're probably fine. Okay. The most common move here from white is to take the pawn, and when they take the pawn, if we can, we just push forward, annoy the knight. Now, there's only really two places for the knight to go. Because they've played this move, right, the knight isn't forced back there. The knight can come to here, right? Anything other than this move, and we are in a winning position, right? Now, if they play that, I'll just show you a few moves. You can double up your bishop against this knight, okay? At which point, what they do, they're going to drop back to g2, which is not great. The best move actually is to bring their queen out with check, okay? And here we have to dodge. And interestingly, from this, in this exact position, according to the engine, black is slightly better, and wins half the time. So we can actually give up the rook here, and then the knight flies into d4, eyeing up the c2 fork, and it's just game on. It's going to be tactical, it's going to be sharp, it's going to be a load of fun. So there you go, enjoy. So there you go, it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour to the Freddy Krueger repertoire, and particularly for me, what to do in case of this. And we've uncovered a couple more interesting things. But in general, the rule that I've learned from this is, if the bishop is there, we take the queen's pawn. If not, we take this pawn and harass the knight. If you can figure out why that rule makes sense, so if the bishop is here, what's different? I mean, why can't I just do this? I mean, both are kind of okay. So if I take this one, which is the wrong move, they take, we can then push d5, and that's absolutely fine as well, actually. And the bishop has to retreat. So I don't know, go figure, go figure. Yeah, if you can figure that out, please let me know. Other than that, I hope it's been interesting. Thank you for watching. See you soon.